The Fairy Queen is a captivating and mysterious figure in folklore, ruling over the Fae and existing between worlds. She governs a court of magical beings in the otherworld. Her presence is most prominent in Celtic, Irish, and British mythology, where she is seen as the Queen of the Fae and the guardian of the otherworld. Let's explore some key aspects of her role in mythology and the stories connected to her. In Irish folklore, the Fairy Queen is often identified with Clíodhna, a queen of the Banshees, and a goddess of love and beauty. One of Clíodhna's most well-known stories involves her 3 magical birds, whose songs had the power to heal the sick. She is also closely connected to the sea, especially in Munster, where legend says she drowned after being carried away by the waves while asleep on a beach. Clíodhna's story is often tied to human figures, particularly the McCarthy clan. According to legend, she gifted them the famous Blarney stone as a protector of the McCarthy family, particularly those from Blarney. She is said to have granted them her favor, offering wisdom, protection, and magical gifts. Her influence is believed to have helped the McCarthy lords rise to prominence during the medieval period, providing strength in times of hardship. One of the most famous aspects of Clíodhna's connection to the McCarthy clan is the legend of the Blarney stone. The Blarney stone, a block of limestone built into Blarney Castle, is believed to grant the gift of eloquence, or the gift of the gab, to those who kiss it, allowing them to speak persuasively and charm others. The origin of this magical power is attributed to Clíodhna. According to one version of the tale, the first Lord of Blarney, Cormac later McCarthy, found himself in legal trouble with Queen Elizabeth I of England. Desperate to retain his lands, he sought Clíodhna's help. She advised him to kiss a specific stone, which would grant him the gift of eloquence. Following her advice, Cormac met with the Queen's representatives, and his charm and persuasive words were so effective that he managed to keep his castle and lands. From this point on, the McCarthys were said to have kept the stone at their castle, and it became famous for granting eloquence to anyone who kissed it. In the early 8th century, in Fur Mag Fine, now Fermoy, there lived Droy Ruad, the last of the Druids. He had assisted the King of Munster by summoned a great storm to drive back their enemies. As a reward for his service, the king had granted the Druid the title Prince of Fermoy. The Druid had 2 accomplished and beautiful daughters. The elder was called Clíodhna, who could transform creatures to any form she pleased, and was titled the Queen of the Fairies. The younger daughter was called Aoivil, and was her inseparable companion. Caiov O'Keefe was a prince accomplished in mind and body, who had inherited a neighboring territory. He was in the habit of visiting the Druid's palace and liked to join in the sports in which he was often victorious. This attracted the admiration of the Druid and his daughters. Both sisters fell in love with O'Keefe. Clíodhna expressed her love openly, and discussions began with her father for their marriage. Aoivil secretly fell in love and worked to gain his affection by her innocent arts. Caiov fell deeply in love with Aoivil, but this was quickly discovered by Clíodhna. Due to her jealousy, Clíodhna called upon the oldest of her nurses to curse her innocent sister. Aoivil was struck with sickness and lost her beauty. Clíodhna pretended to help by giving her a powerful sleeping potion, which caused Aoivil to appear dead. Aoivil was placed in a coffin and mourned by the Druid and his wife, who were filled with deep sorrow. She was then laid to rest in a tomb beneath the palace. Clíodhna and the nurse secretly entered the tomb through a hidden entrance and moved the still unconscious Aoivil to a cave at Castlecore in the northeast of Kanturk. When Aoivil awoke, she was told she would be imprisoned there until she forgot about Caiov. However, Clíodhna, realizing it might be impossible to make Aoivil forget her love, became consumed with jealousy and transformed Aoivil into a beautiful white cat. Clíodhna magically transformed the cave into a palace to ease her sister's suffering. The cave at Castlecore was said to be filled with treasures of gold and silver, guarded by a white cat sitting on a throne. Clíodhna told Aoivil that Caiov had fallen in battle with the Danes, but Aoivil's love for him remained unchanged. For 1 week each year, during midsummer, Aoivil would return to her true form. Visitors to the cave sometimes glimpsed the cat residing in the palace, surrounded by treasure, but were driven away by a powerful wind or an invisible force. When Caiov heard of Aoivil's supposed death, he was overcome with sorrow. The Druid and his wife were also devastated by grief, which led them to an untimely death. In time, Caiov and Clíodhna were married amidst great rejoicing. They had 3 children and lived happily together. However, the old nurse fell gravely ill, and her guilty conscience forced her to confess everything to Caiov. Upon learning the truth, the prince confronted Clíodhna, but she refused to release her sister. She admitted that she could no longer return Aoivil to her true form, as she had lost her precious wand. This created an irreparable rift between Caiov and Clíodhna, and eventually, she withdrew to her fairy palace at Cleena. Despite the division between them, Clíodhna would often visit Clíodhna, pleading for forgiveness and begging for Aoivil's release. Although Clíodhna was still unable to break the enchantment, it was said that the spell could be undone if someone loved Aoivil more than all the treasures she guarded. Clíodhna continued to visit her sister, and on rare occasions, Aoivil would briefly return to her human form, allowing the sisters to share moments of happiness together. In the context of witchcraft, historical records, especially from the witch trials of early modern Europe, suggest that some accused witches were believed to have interacted with supernatural beings like the Fairy Queen. In Scotland, during the infamous witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries, several women claimed that they had been in contact with the Fairy Queen, or had been taken to her other world. One notable case is that of Isabel Gowdy, a woman from Scotland accused of witchcraft in 1662. Gowdy testified that she had met the Fairy Queen and had been given magical abilities by her, including the power to shapeshift. In 1736, the wedding of John FitzGerald and Isabel Butler was held. As the wedding was nearing its end, dancing and feasting was underway. Then, as if struck by lightning, John dropped dead at Isabel's feet. All in attendance were shocked, and it was generally believed he had been transported in spirit to fairyland. Friends and associates of the couple attempted to make contact with fairies to try to bring him back. Caitlín Dubh Keating and her daughter Caitlín Oge traveled to Cleena to contact Clíodhna. They covered their clothes in tar and rolled themselves in feathers of different colors. They saw Clíodhna face to face, and they demanded the return of John, but Clíodhna firmly refused, saying she would keep him for herself. While there are a number of versions of the story, Robert D. Joyce's poem has a happy ending with Clíodhna releasing the groom named Gerald FitzGerald, Earl of Desmond. In one version, Caitlín Oge was the bride. As the witch hunt swept across Europe, many elements of folk belief were demonized, including the figure of the Fairy Queen. The transformation of the Fairy Queen from a benevolent or neutral figure to one associated with witchcraft and evil reflects the broader cultural changes of the time. As fear of witchcraft grew, any connection to the supernatural world, whether through fairies or other mythical beings, became suspect. The once revered Fairy Queen, along with her magical realm, was now part of the feared Witches' Sabbath, where witches were believed to gather for dark rituals. Clíodhna's nature is complex, with actions and traits that resist easy categorization as purely good or evil. However, Clíodhna is also connected to themes of danger and tragedy. In some legends, she is depicted as fickle and unpredictable. One well-known story claims that she was drowned by a magical wave while sleeping, possibly as punishment from the sea god Manannán mac Lir for abandoning her divine duties. This tale adds an ominous layer to her mythology. Additionally, the banshees she leads are traditionally feared, as their wails herald death. In the end, whether Clíodhna is perceived as good or evil depends on the version of the myth and the lens through which one interprets her story. Her allure lies precisely in her ambiguity, at once enchanting and foreboding.